Hey everybody, October 21st, 2025, here with your after hours recap. So I sat around a little bit in after hours waiting for Tesla to report. Pretty much a nothing burger. Don't really want to think too much of this price action here. You are just still sitting inside a pretty big base, and there's just really nothing to do until Elon gets on the conference call and we figure out what is going on. I did de-risk a little bit more of my trade today. And then it's not really doing anything. I just didn't want to get hit into potentially nasty gap down, Netflix style after seeing that. So I was just like, all right, you know what, let me just get down to regular size position for an earnings, and we can just kind of work it from there. If this thing is going to stay bullish and we get bought up for into tomorrow or after the conference call, great. If not, then I don't really want to have a big position on. Into today, we started to see some big speculative names unwind quite a bit, where, look at what they were doing to OKLO, just some more continued down move. I mean, just three unfilled gaps effectively, two unfilled gaps in a row. With today a pickup in volume, you started to see what they were doing to LEU. Effectively, all the stocks that had gotten way too extended to the upside, risk starts to happen quickly on the downside, and that's just, kind of the nature of the beast. With that, you also started to lose what felt like Palantir for a moment, and ultimately this thing is still just continuing to chop. You did bounce nicely near the end of the day. And I did talk about this on last night's watch list video, where, the names that had gone most vertical recently, whether it's an OKLO or SMR or LEU or Rigetti, IONQ, UAMY, etc. And I was short a few of these. I thought that we would kind of be approaching today as a potential. I was hopeful for a gap down and a little bit of a morning washout and then a bounce. That bounce didn't take place until the end of the day. If you look at a few of these names, and this one didn't really go vertical as some of the others, but an NBIS right into the 50-day and then a bounce. CRWV, similar deal. Right into the 50-day, undercut it a little bit, and then started to 620 setup and rally right back through. Very, very nice move into the end of the day. This is kind of what I was thinking was possible today. And I've been short, a UAMY since the mid-18s. And as soon as we started to recover in the morning, and I noticed, or in the afternoon, and I noticed UUUU going, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm not going to sit here as these things rally back for a couple days. Let me just go ahead and kill the short. It was fun while it lasted. Got a nice little move down. I covered it on 10.16, some on the lows of 10.15, some 10.16, and then today, and that was just a good enough trade for me. Rigetti, I finally got out of it as well today when we started to turn back up. That was another one of those where, okay, it's, you just go straight down like this. Is the market going to bounce some of these names tomorrow? I don't know, but you catch a move like this for me that quickly. I didn't want to marry, the short side. I thought we would get some kind of a sharp rebound over the next few days. And then, if I want to short it again against the 20 or the 5-day or the 10-day, I would get that opportunity. And Nugget as well. So as soon as we started to turn back up on Nugget, I let Nugget go as well. So very nice trade. You're bouncing off the 50-day after a really, really sharp move down. Fantastic. I covered some yesterday, about 136 bucks. And then I just covered some more today. I want to say like 134 and a half. So ultimately a really, really nice trade. I can't complain with that. I did reshort some SNDK, and I reshorted SNDK when we lost VWAP. So that, so far, so good. Didn't close very strong. I'm thinking this probably has a little bit of catching up to do, even if there's a bit of the bounce in the speculative names. I would suspect that, maybe a STX, WDC, MU, pull back a little bit more. I also did put on a little bit of NVIDIA short at about 179 bucks as we were starting to lose the 50 simple moving average. And that's fine. It did close fairly strong, so I'm like I'm red by like 50 cents right now, so no big deal at all. It's also just a 5% position, like nothing serious. I would add to it, if this thing could, start to act heavy as well underneath the 50, and if the market doesn't bounce, you've kind of had these moments where it looks like it's about to wash out, and then it recovers, and it tries to wash out, and then it recovers. So, just kind of one of those scenarios where I don't want to get too aggressive on this name, but also you start to lose the 50. I am comfortable playing it on the short side. And really, earnings have just been kind of, it's been a hit or miss, right? Where you get a nice move in Galaxy yesterday, and really you're just green, and then today you're unwinding it a little bit. GEV was a bit nasty, and it just, unfortunately, this one got caught in all the miasma that's going on in the market, according to Jim Cramer. I don't know what miasma was until about 5 minutes ago, and that's exactly what GEV got caught in, is the miasma. So effectively, it just got caught in some of the exuberance of, LEU and OKLO and the other ones. And then when those started to unwind, they came for this one as well, even on earnings. Yes, a bit of a nice bounce back, but really wide and loose, a big pickup in volume, not a ton for me to do there, unfortunately. So just going to kind of leave this one alone for the time being. And then even a Rocket Lab, boy, did this one get lucky, because I told myself, you start to close underneath the 20-day, I'll just be done with it. Now, this one does fit the bill of speculative a little bit. So if money starts to, maybe come back into a few of these speculative names and they want to bounce a little bit, then I think, this one could also have a little bit of a rebound. And then ideally it tightens up and I could just continue to use the 20-day as my stop from there. But, the market was just a bit of chop, right? Gold came all the way down to the 50-day when you look at your GDX and obviously your Nugget, and a little bit of a bounce there. I thought crude oil stocks were very interesting today. Like, I look at something like Dino and I say to myself, like, man, this is just, you get your move up and you go sideways. You get your move up and you go sideways. You get your move up and you digest. You get your move up and now you digest. These crude oil stocks look pretty damn good. I don't know if this thing is going to go or not, but it does indeed look good. MPC is another one. I think, bouncing off the 50 could be pretty interesting. I think XOM, although a little bit annoying, as you zoom into the right-hand side of the chart, you're above all key moving averages. You're trying to break higher. Crude oil hasn't been doing a damn thing. And here we are with just a bunch of crude oil stocks that are just hanging in there. So, that's nice to see. And again, I thought maybe there's an opportunity, or maybe there is an opportunity on some of a bounce back on these speculative names, but in no way, shape, or form do I think that these names are going to revisit an all-time high. I look at something like Iron and, gun to head, an OKLO, an Iron, an IONQ, a Rigetti, the highs for the year are in, more than likely. I am 95% sure. And I could be wrong, but I do believe that pops on this thing will be shortable whenever they do come. But that's just kind of my thinking. I hate to say that, right? Because it's like I want to be more optimistic. I want to remain bullish. And I still think the MAGS ETF looks fine, right? You had this bit of an ugly shakeout today. You bounced okay. You're hanging in there. A break over today's highs could be viewed as bullish, and then we're off to the races again. And oh, you stupid idiots, you thought we were going down, right? That was like the attitude today, and then all of a sudden, you're right back out to highs, and you're working really well. But names out there got absolutely hammered. Look at what they did to HUT today, down 17, almost 20%. At one point, they were doing the same thing to Bitfarms, just absolutely disrespecting some of these stocks. Iron, same deal. CIFR, same deal. Money is just flying out of some of these speculative spaces. And like I said, gun to head, it's over with for Bitfarms. You're not going to 660 anytime soon. You would need an entirely new base that probably wouldn't even be able to break out until, year end. And it's very doubtful that, you're breaking out from that all-time high. You'd be breaking out from like a low cheat setup. So really just, it's just amounts to being patient here, Like I said, I did take my shorts off the table. I did add to an NVIDIA. I did take an SNDK, so those are fresh shorts. But ultimately, I went ahead and took off the ones that paid me very, very quickly. Those have more than made up for some of the paper cuts I've taken on the way, trying to either get into some of these shorts or trying to get myself resituated in longs. That just did not work. Congratulations to the Beyond Meat Bulls. Beyond Meat over the last few days has been absolutely insane. Congratulations to those longs, anybody who participated, and also congratulations to the shorts. I know a handful of you guys made 7 figures on this trade, so that is awesome to see. Love to see when friends get paid like that. So congratulations to you guys. You guys deserve it. Shorting this absolute dog shit stock back into oblivion makes me completely happy. Something I probably should have traded. This is like a 6-figure opportunity right here that I just did not take advantage of. Trading 2 billion shares. I mean, you could punch in for 100,000 shares and it's like a 1-cent spread. So pretty unbelievable. And I didn't see anything again in the market that would get me super excited. And that's kind of the problem that I've got going on here. I don't see any clean bases. And I don't know that anybody else does either. I mean, you look at something like BABA, and I say to myself, okay, this thing needs to get back out above the 20, or I leave it alone. I look at something like, NBIS. I thought today was interesting. Maybe this is and was buyable at the 50-day today. I don't really know what happens tomorrow morning. Maybe CoreWeave was another one that was buyable at the 50. So it's like, you'll have to be comfortable buying things on weakness right now, but don't just buy it on weakness. Buy it when it starts to turn back up. So that's kind of my thinking. Don't just buy weakness. Start to buy it as it's turning back up, and then you've got a level where you can effectively risk off of right away, and something like that is your entry. So Lance talks about this concept all the time, the right side of the V, but don't just play the right side of the V in no man's land. Play right side of the V into key support areas, the 50-day, the 20-day, a prior day low, an undercut and rally, et cetera, et cetera. So just be mindful of where is the chart on the daily, and then when you go to take this, how is the underlying market acting in the moment that I'm taking that kind of setup, right? So that's just something to be totally mindful of. Like I said, I thought crude oil names were pretty decent. I look at something like Dell, and I'm like, okay, I thought this bounced back fairly nicely, right back off the 20-day. Could this thing go tomorrow? Again, look at the high here, 151.41, 151.30, and 151.39. So I don't know, 151.50 sounds pretty good if it ever wants to get going over that level. Something like that looks pretty good. General Motors, a little bit too slow, but it did have a high volume close setup, which it did close right at yesterday's highs. Again, not really a setup for me, but it is hanging in there. And I was kind of hopeful that this one would kind of foretell what was going to happen to Tesla. Not so much. VRT beaten up on earnings as well. You post earnings, you gap up, and then they just sell you off all day right back into the 20s. So this is kind of what I was saying yesterday during the after hours recap is we don't know if stocks are going to gap up on earnings and go higher. We don't know if they're going to gap up on earnings like VRT and then sell off. We don't know if they're going to gap down on earnings like Netflix and then continue lower. Like, we just don't know, right? You gap down on earnings, you continue lower. A GEV where it's like you're volatile, like even GEV, a name that I kind of like, right? What are they doing? They gap it up right into the 20, the 10, and the 50-day, and then it just starts to digest, and then right at the open just starts to sell off right from the word go on big volume. So yes, I understand it's a bit of a bounce today, but you are beneath the 20, the 50, the 10, the 5-day. I mean, you're underneath yesterday's lows. So, before we all start, clamoring for victory for GEV just for a bounce, just remember you're under a bunch of, you're under effectively a pretty big base here. And, you don't know how many people have accumulated in here that are now underwater that want to get out. And tomorrow this thing could be easily right back down to 550. So just kind of be conscious of that when you're making your decisions. Like I said, I'm hopeful that my Tesla starts to act better into tomorrow, but at the same time, we've got some things that are on the cusp of being red flags, right? NVIDIA starts to lose the 50-day. We're very close. You know, Palantir starts to lose the 50-day. We are very close. Robinhood starts to lose the 50-day. You did bounce there today. And again, if you are prepared for this, did you take this as a potential long setup for the end of the day bounce? I don't know that everybody did, but you know, there is some low risk opportunity in there if you're prepared for it. Again, not for everybody, but if you're going to buy it, right, it's like we're kind of in the environment where you buy it when everybody wants to sell it, and then you sell it where everybody wants to buy it. In other words, breakouts aren't really working. You want to sell into that. And then, you know, breakdowns aren't really happening unless it's speculative. So you want to almost buy into that. So it's a little bit of a contrarian environment right now. Effectively, we're trading within ranges. And then obviously there's some stuff like Hood, which is just, you know, casually floating back to the 50-day. I don't want to say it's bad until you start to break and lose the 50-day. But NVIDIA starts to break and lose the 50-day. You know, Palantir starts to break and lose the 50-day. Then, you know, we might have some bigger problems on our hands. And again, I don't know that anybody can find me 5 clean bases that are prepared to go higher. So that's part of the problem. If you can't really find clean setups and clean bases, then you just are better off doing nothing at the moment. I do think that there might still be a trading opportunity on some of the speculative stuff, as crazy as it might sound, to play it for a quick bounce back up, maybe Thursday into Friday, sell it on Friday, go to sleep with some money in your pocket, and then kind of be done with it. But you have to figure that out for yourself. You have to know what's an opportunity for you and not an opportunity for me. But I did de-risk those awesome shorts. I'm done with them. I did post them in the room for anybody you know, who's there. Please check them out. And yeah, that's just kind of my thinking for now. It's a little bit of a hands-off environment for me. Do very, very little until we could start to get through some of these earnings, and then we figure out where the heck money is trying to go and where it is that money is trying to leave. Hopefully you guys all had an awesome trading day, and I will see you guys tomorrow morning. Cheers.